Good morning, everyone, and welcome to week one of Facility Design FDNM 1011. My name is Steve Hilborn. So this is the first week's lecture. Typically in the first week, what we would do is that we'd go over the syllabus and the in-class assignment and things like that. That being said, there's already a video covering that material, so we will just jump right into all of the actual lecture material here today. So the first thing I often like to start out with this is asking the class, what is their design experience? Now, I know this is a video lecture, but when you think about design, the things that people often come to mind is, how do I want to design my home or renovate my home? So you look at lighting and color and furnishings. You look at the way that the flow is when people are walking through that room. Do I want storage? Do I want it open concept? Do I like it cozy and kind of closed in? And we'll think about this kind of mentality when we should look at all of our spaces, including commercial spaces for guests and long-term and retirement spaces for your customers. So we'll be using a program called Microsoft Visio, as I already indicated. So what we were able to do with Microsoft Visio is create floor plans such as this. So this right here is a floor plan that I created when we built a brewery or a brew pub in Barrie. So this is Redline Brew House. And as you can see here, we kind of did all the floor planning with tables and how you would enter into it. And you can kind of see where the walking areas are and how this all works. As well as there's a mezzanine upstairs, which is kind of cut off. And it does go into detail as far as what is the size of all the tables, the depth from the top step to the back, what's behind the bar, and then, of course, which is probably the most important, how do you design your back of house, your cooking area? And as you can see, we had this huge walk-in fridge for all our beers, since we're a brewery, as well as a smaller walk-in fridge and some freezers for the actual place. On the right-hand side here, you'll see that this is a blow-up of what is here on the left-hand side. And you'll see that this is the service window where all the food goes up. And then just all of the different pieces of equipment and the room that they have back there. So it gives you just an idea of how this program here can create something like this. So this is the actual Redline Brew House. And as you can see, this is the bar. The kitchen will be back over here. This is the stairwell mezzanine that we went up, and the brewery in the background. And looking at this, you can kind of really see you're kind of standing in this area here, looking across that area. So it's really neat, the program. I've used it to reno my house. I've used it for all kinds of different projects. It's something that will be with you forever. It's a skill set that you'll always have. So I really encourage you to have a lot of fun with this course, because it is supposed to be fun and creative and for you to create some original, almost art. So when we go into the actual lecture, we talk about the impact of facility design. And really when we think about it, it's the science of movement, or the how people move and how work gets completed. Often we look at, when you think about mass production in workplaces, you think of like car factories like Ford and Honda, where every little person has their own little spot on this line, and they go through and they have been able to increase production. The assembly line is one of those huge things that affected industry and affected facility design in business many, many years ago, starting with Ford. As a theory, facility design can help improve production by removing steps or supplying efficient means of work, improve your traffic flow so there's no congestions, there's no accidents, and in our particular industry, no cross-contamination. They improve the quality of food and how it's served, ensure customer or employee comfort and safety, and then also enhance customer appeal. So it's been documented that the design and the layout of a facility is a key factor in determining the success or failure of a business. We'll go through a bunch of ideas of looking at how design has failed, and where like we have created more work for our employees, or created confusion for our customers, and where it's really succeeded. So a few terms that you need to know are physical, design, and layout. So physical is the material elements that make and take up the space. The design is the broad function of the development of the area. So this is site selection, the menu, the equipment, the decor, and the layout refers to how we arrange the physical components in our design. Okay, so I just should give you an idea of kind of the three main things that we'll be playing with. And again, this just gives you a couple pictures here to give you an idea of how different houses are laid out. And all of these have something in common, is that they are trying to be the most efficient with the space that they have, because space costs money. Typically, when you rent or lease a place, you lease it by the square footage. So for every square foot, you have to pay a certain amount. If it's wasted space, you are losing out on that money that you are paying for. There are also a couple trends that we want to talk about. Now, some of these trends are pre-COVID, so keep that in mind. And obviously, COVID has just really kind of changed our whole industry. And while there has been some negative, there's also going to be some great opportunities. And we'll talk about that as we go forward. But pre-COVID, there was a lot of changes in the patterns of eating out. So more meals than ever were being eaten out. Food delivery services were taking over, and now they are essentially the only way that a lot of people are getting their food. But also with that, there's been very little change in disposable income. So the prices and styles of food have had to change as well. And what you are seeing is that you are seeing a lot of more inexpensive, I won't say cheap, but inexpensive food options that are out there that people are really grabbing onto. And you'll see a lot more, fast service style of food that's happening. And now, while this trend cannot be said, this is true for the entire industry, there is this huge local component, and there is this huge component where people are looking for more healthy, organic foods. This is a huge pattern in a vast majority of the people who are eating out right now, that they are ordering food delivery services to bring them food that is often not the highest quality, but is less in money because there has been little change in disposable income. There's also an overall desire for a greater health, conscious decisions, physical fitness, and well-being. So often these restaurants that before maybe offered very heavy, full-fat, sodium-based meals are now offering lighter, healthier fares, more organic dishes. This often results in new equipment and new processes. And then we also have a concern for freshness. So we want made to order. I don't want food ready in a chafing dish or a buffet dish, and then when I order it, they just scoop it. I want food that they don't start cooking it until the minute that I order it. So this has also led to open kitchens and more exhibition style cooking. Now, there is a couple different slides here about healthier fast food or healthier different styles of food. I won't go through all of them, but take a look if you wish. This is another big one, concern for employees. So the hospitality area, when it comes to food and beverage, it's difficult to keep good staff. So there are labor shortages everywhere. So this has led a lot of the designers to build facilities that are easy and attractive to work in. Right now in our industry, the hardest job to hire for and to keep is a qualified line cook or dishwasher. And basically because it's not a very well-paying job, you work in very hot and wet and damp environments. You don't get to see a ton of people. And it's one of those environments it's quite difficult to work in, where you can make maybe the same amount of money working in a retail store or same amount of money working at a Home Depot or whatever, something like that. So ensuring that these people will stay here, we look to design to see if we can ensure that they stay a little bit longer. Starbucks has a really good way of doing this themselves, where they say, hey, being a Starbucks barista is actually considered something that people are proud of, and they want to be that, and they look at it and say that's a really kind of cutting edge, cool job that you have. So they'll look at different funky, fresh, colorful designs to put into their restaurants, their food operations. Air-conditioned kitchens, and nice, great lighting. So if I work in a really dingy, dark, hot kitchen, I might not enjoy my day as much, where if it's air-conditioned, I feel cooler, You have staff lounges and washrooms that I can relax in during my break. The equipment is easy to clean. There's great lighting. Now all of a sudden, my day at work has changed quite a bit. And what we've realized as operators and owners is that the investment into the design of that property, regardless of what it might cost you, will always pale in comparison to the amount of money that you would otherwise lose if you always have to keep hiring new staff and trying to train them because you can't hold on to them. So it's a huge trend affecting food service design. Another one is the concern for the environment. So while this is not necessarily a trend anymore, but more so just a way of life that everyone needs to adopt, we want to look at certain ways and how to do this. And now the consumer has become really a lot more concerned with where they do business, and they want to do business at places that also look after the environment. So using less space if we're able to, having a smaller carbon footprint through efficient use of energy. When you think about food service, our lights are on nonstop. We have air conditioning blasting. We have hot kitchens and air conditioning, which are fighting nonstop. We have fridges and freezers and water running, and we are a big consumer of energy. So we'll always be a higher consumer of energy, but there are better ways for us in which to do it. One of the things is LEED. So LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. So it means developing spaces that that qualify for certain amounts of points for each of the following areas, which is using a sustainable site, water efficiency, so ensuring we're using our water properly, energy use, how many materials and resources, so single-use takeout containers and things like that are a big no-no, and then indoor environmental air quality. So, ensuring you use LED lights and ensuring you have different HEPA filters. A lot of this is really important, especially now in our COVID area, where there are huge concerns with indoor air quality in high schools, elementary and high schools, because they haven't had their HVAC systems updated for so long. COVID has really affected materials and resources, where now every single restaurant, instead of using all of their cutlery and plateware that they could just wash, instead now they're using single-use takeout containers, some plastic spoons and forks and knives, non-recyclable material. And it would be interesting to see what the difference is, because they are not using water to wash them and energy to heat the water, but they are using these. I wonder if there's some sort of balancing act there. I'm curious. So there's LEED, which I talked about for lower monthly costs. Why is it a big trend for us to use? But there's different classifications out there as well. But LEED is one of the main worldwide renowned ones. And Tim Hortons, believe it or not, is one of the ones that has received a LEED designation. And we'll go through why they have. Another one is economic factors. So when people think of sustainability, they often think of the environment, and that's really it. But sustainability has never just been about the environment. It's about three main things. It's called the triple bottom line. And what it is the environment. Yes, keep the environment green, and let's not waste resources, and be as good as we can to our earth. Another one is local. So this is local community. So hiring local workers, not bringing in international workers to work a job that someone here can. Putting the money back into the community and treating those people correctly. And then also the third one is economic. And while many people will argue it's not the most important, without the economic function of your restaurant working properly or your food service working properly, there will be no other. So you have to make enough money to stay open to ensure that you can be environmentally sustainable and you can give back to the community. So some of the economic factors is that we talk about workflow. So reducing the time workers spend moving from one task to another by having the tools, equipment, and storage close at hand. And a perfect way is looking at a line setup in a kitchen or even a bartender setup behind a bar, ensuring they have all of the things in front of them that they need. And it might be just a small matter of just rearranging some of the food material or the beverage material that you have in front of you to be a little bit more efficient. Traffic flow is huge. We talk about traffic flow a lot throughout this course because it really does dictate how a workday will work. You will highlight all the congestion areas, all the traffic areas, and if you think about grocery stores and think about their layout. When you walk into a grocery store, you almost automatically know where to go for produce, where to go to the meat counter or the seafood area or where the bread is or the cleaning supplies. And it's because we've just figured out where people like to travel, and they've kind of created a pathway for you to follow. Ikea is a fantastic person that is all about traffic flow, where they basically direct you through their whole warehouse, essentially, ensuring that you see every single item and buying the most that you can. Costco's another good one. They have great traffic flow designs. Flexible workspaces, so creating adaptable spaces that can serve multiple functions. Prep areas being one of them. You prep different things throughout the day and night. Different people work in there. You could have a 4'8" worker and a 6'6" worker. So, like, how do you work between those two heights? Energy use, so reducing energy where we can from the economic appeal of this. And then resource maximization, which is using all the things that we've talked about here to help ensure the best balance of space, labor, and money. So these are some of the economic factors that is now trending in food service design, and we look at all of these to ensure that we have set up a proper front of house, back of house area for all of our customers to eat in, but our employees to work in. Another big one is changes in technology. And by the time I finished writing this slide, it had already evolved. That's how fast technology is moving. So when you're looking at here, yes, we have online menus and we have nutritional information. There's actually a law now that if you have more than 5 restaurants or 5 units of a particular brand, you have to provide nutritional information to all the people. You can order through iPad menus and digital menus at the table. There's inventory systems. We can do order online ahead of time. You can pay for your phone, and I can just tap my phone, and I just paid for it. Online marketing has become almost mainstay marketing. We rarely watch commercials. We rarely look at actual paper advertisements, or not nearly as much as our social media and online media, because it's fairly cheap or sometimes free, and it has the best penetration into the market for this kind of marketing. And then also new equipment. There's just been a huge explosion of different kinds of equipment. So how do we cook food cheaper, quicker, more efficiently? And there's inversion cookers and all kinds of different things that are out there that take up less space and they take up less energy. So these are some of the things that are now happening. And unfortunately, what happens is because we have trained staff on a particular piece of equipment, and once it's in our kitchens, it's very hard to remove. Most restaurants that you will visit have not stayed up with this. As an example, there's a lot of these places here that are coming up where robot chefs are essentially making all of the food now, and that they will actually have robots that mimic a chef cooking and cutting and making an omelet or whatever it might be, and the robot can 100% replicate those actions and make the same thing. So it's going to be a good conversation. I'd like to talk about this actually in class a little bit with you, about how you feel about a robot making your dinner for you and paying for it. I talk about this one here in class, and then we'll also speak about some regulatory considerations. So there are major players of all restaurant builds. This is the planning department, so this is ensuring everything's being built to code. Liquor license permits, so there's been a lot of changes in Ontario with our liquor license. Now we can serve beer at 9 a.m. Most gas stations can now serve beer in grocery stores, beer, alcohol, wine. Smart Serve is still a requirement now for all of those people. Municipal restaurants and tavern license, fire and emergency services and inspections, and this will define what your carrying capacity or how many people you can have in your building. And then that will also ripple into the whole COVID, where you can only have 25 or 50% capacity in your buildings. So designers are probably now looking at, how do I increase my carrying capacity? So if restrictions are put onto my place, how then I can get still as many people as possible, as well as being safe while doing it. Other building services, bylaw, enforcement services, business license. These are some of the things that we will go through. And then we also look at I have 4 special considerations or location considerations that you want to think about. So yes, there are these trends that are affecting food service design, but also location considerations really affect how we design restaurants. And one thing is, as an example, is in a downtown or commercial facility. So by downtown, I mean an urban city. So restaurants often cater to downtown business. They have tight timelines for lunches. Rent's often very expensive. So ensuring all square footage is properly designed is important. A lot of these restaurants are now being built vertically because they pay for square footage of a piece of land, but what they're not paying extra for is maybe their basement or the second floor. When you have more rural restaurants, people might live in apartments above that restaurant. Instead, they might have their kitchen on the second floor and their main eating area on the first and storage in the basement. So they're building vertically, not out. Suburban restaurants typically draw from a larger radius and require good transportation routes and ample parking, versus downtown commercial places don't need that parking requirement because there's a lot more foot traffic, and they draw from a smaller radius around their restaurant because it's more densely populated. And then shopping centers are a good example of high traffic areas with ample parking. Therefore, they also must pay more expensive rents. And therefore, they must charge more expensive meal prices. So that's something to think about. Schools and universities. Move this somewhere. So schools and universities are often, school food services, are often located on the first floor of buildings, and they sometimes double as study halls or event spaces, such as a cafeteria. Larger schools can operate centralized kitchen systems where they'll have one kitchen, and they'll have maybe 3 or 4 or 5 different food services located around them, but they could be in separate buildings as well. Some, this is mostly in the United States, has residence halls where they often provide some sort of food service or grocery. Here at Georgian College, I love Georgian College. Our food services need work. Our cafeteria, yes, we have the Pizza Hut and the Subway, and they're starting to add on and 4 Tim Hortons on site, but our space is far too small. Now, the problem with this right now is that with no students on site and everyone kind of being online, there's no interest in increasing these spaces. But now would be the perfect time to create a very large food service system for when we do return to campus. Right now, we're a little behind the 8 ball. As well as because we have such a high international student rate, probably 30 to 40%, ensuring that we have groceries on site, culinary kitchens and gardens and orchards and all of these things make a lot of sense. We have butchery programs. We have garde-manger, salad, herb programs. We have actual vegetable gardens. There's no reason we can't have our own grocery store on site that's organic. These are some of the things that we want to think about. Most schools bring in third-party providers, so franchises, and as you can see upstairs in our cafeteria here at Georgian, the majority of all of those places are franchises, so it's not run by the college. The trend is also more inexpensive food at many different periods of time. Another one that we think about is hospital and healthcare centers. So these are unique, as hospitals must design their places not only to cater to staff, but also to employees, to visitors, to guests and patients. Their cafeteria is mostly for your visitors and your employees. Very rarely do you have your patients eating in the cafeteria. They'll have maybe bedside service, or if you are in a hospital, you might not be eating yourself. Often it's a centralized kitchen. and it's usually in the center, and it's kind of the main gathering area for that particular location. Centralized feeds typically one large dining area, while vending and private dining rooms supplement the rest. But then there also must be this option where you are able to fill food trolleys and have an elevator and hallway space to accommodate all this equipment. So you'll have food having to go to a bunch of individual rooms, as well as food being served in a cafeteria area. So they'll have to be separate from each other. As you can see here in this, the emergency is always usually kind of its own separate entity. They have different entrances. They have different kinds of things that are happening in here. And it's one of those areas that is probably the most apart from the rest of the hospital compared to other areas. There's very little food services in the emergency area. Usually that's where they bring in everyone, they do what they have to do for trauma, and then they are sent from there to another place where they're able to recover. So you'll see often in most layouts of hospitals, there's no food services that are directly tied to this cafeteria, hence there being no immediate access here. And then the last one that I want to just bring up is correctional facilities. So this can be very challenging because we have at minimum 3 meals a day that we must serve to all of the inmates. As well, the food service workers are often the inmates or can be the inmates. So safety is the #1 concern, and a manager's office is typically located centrally, raised off the floor with glass partitions. And I think I can show you the control room right here. Now the cafeteria, I should have made this a little bit bigger. Often what they have is they have smaller dining areas. So let's say if you had a jail that fit 20,000 people, 15,000 people, it's a monster. Usually what you have is you'll have a bunch of smaller dining areas to accommodate 100 to 125 people. And what they will do is that they will have different dining periods and run them through almost in a shift system. This is because you don't want too many inmates in one particular area at the same time, because it can incite some sort of violence, and it can be also really hard to control and maintain. So smaller areas that are provided in order to help minimize control issues, all equipment under lock and key, no drawers, they have to have secure storage areas, and limited face-to-face interaction between the serving inmate and the inmate eating as well. So it's a whole different idea of what you would have to do with design. The idea is that when it comes to facility design and when it comes to food service, we are all humans. We all have to eat. But we all are going to eat in different ways depending on where we find ourselves in life. Hopefully we're never finding ourselves in a correctional facility or really a hospital. But chances are we're going to be in one or the other sometime. Hopefully we're all in schools and we're all going to these lovely downtown commercial facilities. But all of these require a different kind of style of thought before we put in any of our design work. So what kind of spaces are we using? What do our employees want to see? What do our customers expect? And what can we do within the economic restraints that we have? How do we make sure that everyone gets what they need? So yeah, this is a very introductory lesson here to this particular course. We talk about a few different trends. We talk about a couple special location considerations. When we meet on Wednesday, May 19th, we will go through our first in-class assignment. I will, of course, rehash the syllabus, a little bit about this particular lecture and what we're going to be doing next. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this 29-minute and 41-second lecture. These will be up every single week, at least 3 days in advance, maybe a week in advance, so you have time to watch them. So I'll see you next Wednesday, and thanks for coming out.